Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Javiary. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, because if we're talking about nest boxes, that means we're talking about the beginning of breeding season. So arranged in front of me, in no particular order, I have all the nest boxes I use, and in particular, the one I invented. So stick around. We'll go through all the nest boxes, why I use them, what I like, what I don't like, and we'll talk about how to change one of these into one of these. Okay, so let's start with kind of the classic, and there's two different sizes here, and we'll talk about that too, but kind of the classic nest box, the woven nest. It's really not a nest box, but it's a woven nest. This is probably, I would say, the most common finch breeding device in use today. I am sponsored by Hagen. These are their nests, the Living World nests. I really like them. You can get sort of cheap copies on Amazon, but they don't have this high level weaving. And then one thing I really like about the Living World nest is the nest clip on the back, whether you're gonna hang that on bars or the way I do with two different staples and then slid in. This is really, these prongs are long, and this is really well built and woven in, so you don't have the problem you have with the cheap ones, which is they can break off. And you have two different sizes here. And birds don't just use nests for breeding, right? Some people like them for roosting. I personally don't give my birds roosting nests, but during the breeding season, sometimes they'll use these. The younger fledglings and stuff will use these smaller ones. And they're easy to fit just about anywhere, so good to have. And then I do still do a lot of breeding in these woven nests. The birds in particular that will use these, your zebras, your societies will readily use these, your spice finches will readily use these. And thinking, shaft tails will use these, really that whole genus, so your masked grass finches will consider using these. And they're a very good all-around option, and a lot of people use them successfully. And we'll talk the downsides too. So the downsides of these is they're only good typically for 1 or 2 seasons. They're really hard to clean, and to do any kind of nest check, because most people's hands don't fit in here, you either need to have the snake light, which you've seen me use on previous videos, or you have to unhook the whole nest, which can be disturbing to the birds. But overall, especially if you're going to be breeding some of your easier to breed birds like your zebras and your societies, this is a great, very cost-effective option. You can usually find these online, depending on where you are, from $6 to $12 a piece. Very affordable, very easy to use, good option. Next, we've got, these are 2 GR nest boxes, and just a disclaimer, I have not cleaned my nest boxes yet, so if you're thinking, geez, these kind of look gross, yes, they do. I haven't cleaned them since last season. These are basically the same exact box. From the bottom, they look the same. The difference is the openings. Certain birds, like star finches, like a bigger opening, or Javas. Zebras, societies, Gouldians tend to go for the smaller opening. And I like to offer both. My general policy with nest boxes is for every pair that I have, I try to offer 2 to 1.5, depending on how many pairs you have nest boxes. So for instance, if I had 2 pairs in a cage, I would offer 3 nest boxes. If I had 10 pairs in a cage, I would probably offer 22 to 25 nest boxes. And what that does is it prevents territorial fighting. It prevents anyone from not breeding because they don't have the nest box of their choice or the one they like. So you can't go wrong giving basically too many options. Some things I like about these nest boxes, now they're a little more pricey. You're looking $15 to $20 a piece unless you're really buying in bulk. But they have this vent on top, so you can as long as they don't build a full dome nest inside, you can use this vent to check on the birds. Or if you have to, you can open them up from the top, and it's much easier to access eggs or birds, or, you know, feed birds if you're going to go supplemental feed finches. These are good options. They're also very reusable. So I'll just wash these out with a hose and clean them with some bleach, and then they'll be ready to go for this season. The downside to these is they're a little bit bulkier. A lot of people use them in breeding cages. That's why they have these hook holes on the front, and they hook on the outside of the cage, and that's why the doors open this way. Now, I don't do it that way. I screw them in that way, which is how this hole's been created. And so the downside of that is this tends to open the wrong way for me, but that's okay. I typically try to avoid nest checks, and if I do nest checks at all, it's basically with the snake light. The other downside of just the cost. These are kind of an investment to get into, especially if you're breeding a lot of birds. The price of these, you know, even in bulk, $10, $12 a piece. If you need 10 of them, you're spending $100. That's double the woven nests. Next, we have a different style of woven nest. These are often sold online as like hummingbird nests. Same cons as the other woven nests, maybe even a little bit worse to clean. Some birds like them. A lot of the African finches tend to gravitate towards these nests. I found really good ones and really bad ones. Typically, you find them sold in sets, so you'll get 2 for $20 or 3 for $25 is a good deal. But again, just another good solid woven option, but they're really only useful for about a season or two, especially because these hanging strings start to wear out on you. And here's another option. I believe this is also a 2GR product. They're made of like a harder plastic, and they're smaller than these ones, if you can see the difference. They're a little bit more prone to breaking. As you can see, this one's got a broken cage clip, but again, I mount them the same way with just a screw hole. Some of the again, like African birds or the star finches will like these with the bigger opening. Their main plus to this one is they'll fit in places where maybe the bigger nest box would not, and then they also tend to take less nesting material to fill. The nice thing about these is you can open them either direction. A little bit hard to work, but they're a little bit better for the way I use them. And then they're very cleanable. Again, the downside is cost, and they're a little bit more fragile, but I like them. And if you've noticed, I've numbered all my nest boxes. And the reason for that is very simple. I keep track of where baby birds are being born, what nest they came out of, who the parents are. And so the easiest way to do that is just number all your nest boxes with a Sharpie. This year, as you can see on this, the blue I had been using doesn't show up very well in the dark project. So I have actually gotten some silver Sharpies this year. Should make my life a little bit easier. So here's another option. This is another Hagen product, and they're a little bit harder to find. I think they may have been discontinued. They're very interesting. They come as like a flat box, and you have to assemble them. They're obviously a larger nest box. One of the cool things about these is they have a viewing window, so I think you can see on camera. You can see what the birds are doing in there. The actual, this lifts up too. The actual nest slot is right in here. So they tend to build right up against this glass. Now, with finches, sometimes you get a view, sometimes you don't. These were sold as parakeet nest boxes. I think they're a little small for that, but sometimes the nest blocks your view, but sometimes it doesn't, and that's kind of cool. They're vented on this side, so you don't have a big humidity issue with these. The downside is because they're black, they show mess big time. So this isn't like bird poop that's sitting on here. This is kind of accumulated thing, and I'll be able to wash this off, but they do get dirty throughout the season. but another cool, just different option to provide for your birds. Oh, my camera. And then the last kind I use are these. They're sold online. Typically, they're made in China. Don't know how bird safe they are. They're sold as budgie or lovebird nest boxes. They're too small for that. They're the wrong shape. However, they do make good finch nest boxes, especially, and I'll give my buddy, he goes by Gouldian63 on Instagram, my buddy Warren, some credit. He's the one who showed me this idea. So what I do is I take super glue and I glue a section of PVC pipe, and then you've kind of made a secret tunnel into the nest box. And Gouldians, and especially like your mass grass finches, birds, some of those birds tend to like having the tunnel to go in. The downside to these, one of the obvious downsides you can see here, they're really hard to clean. They definitely get mold and mildew. I don't know if this box is even going to last through this season. And then the equipment, the furniture here, the metal stuff rusts pretty significantly, pretty fast, because it's the low quality, cheap metal. The upside is they have a big space in the inside. They have this little divider bar in there. Typically, usually the parents will build on this side, so you kind of have like an entrance room and then the main room in the house in here. And the birds seem to like that and makes them feel secure. So these are a good option. Again, very pricey, and they don't last very long, especially outside, 1 or 2 seasons, and they're hard to clean. But a good option to consider especially for Gouldians and other hard to breed species. And then last but not least, we'll talk about my invention here. So these are call these my mason jar nest boxes or nests. And they're really simple. So these are plastic 16-ounce mason jars with the lid. And so I drill, which I'll show you in a second. What I do is I drill a hole in the lid offset. So that way you still have a lip here to catch eggs or baby birds that might be trying to jump out. And then I drill a vent hole in the top and then some small vent holes underneath to keep it from having a humidity problem. And then either with just a screw or a screw with a washer behind it, I just mount these like this. And I try to mount them at a slight angle. So basically they mount like this, and that way the birds feel secure. And the idea I came up with for this is it basically replicates what some of your African finches and your parrot finches would use in the wild, which is kind of like either like a hole in a fallen log or a hole in a tree or a little spot between some rocks. And it seems to work really well. I've had parrot finches come out of these. I've had fire finches come out of these. I've had several wax bills come out of these. And the zebras and the societies will use them too. And they're very cost effective, even if you factored in the cost of paint and everything else. I think these still come out to roughly $2 a nest, $2 US a nest. So that's really, really cost effective. And then they're pretty easy to clean. You can just rinse them right out. So this is a good option. And now I'll show you how I make a new one. Okay, so step 1, you want to make sure you have the lid screwed down tight. And then I'm going to try to do this without cutting my hand off on camera. You line it up again, like I said, so it's offset. You hope your camera focuses. There we go. And then this is I believe it's a 2-inch, maybe a 2.5-inch drill bit. It's actually made for putting doorknobs on doors. And you just very slowly and carefully drill out your hole. Now they all have this cardboard thing that I think is to help make like a watertight seal. So I drill through and then I dispose of that. And then I try to kind of clean up these metal edges. You don't want your birds to get cut. And it actually doesn't leave a sharp edge, except for it can leave those little things there. So I'll take a little file and I'll clean this. All right, so I've got a little hand file and I'll just file that down so it's not sharp, and we're good there. now we've got, this is now the top and this is the bottom of the nest box. So now we know we need to drill the rest of the holes correspondingly. So I like to do one vent hole on the top. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. And then I do one screw hole in the back at the top. Get my camera to focus for you. Again, be careful not to saw through your hand or drill through your hand. And then the last thing I do is just underneath here, I will drill about 6 smaller vent holes. And basically, I'm just trying to prevent debris or humidity buildup. And this doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going in the Louvre. And then the last step I do is the easiest step. So this one's all done. The last step I do is blow everything off, make sure it's clean, and then when I have all 12 of these done, which I just buy a pack of 12, I spray paint them. I used a variety of colors on these just to make it cool and camo looking and kind of blend in to the aviary foliage. But I think any darker color would suffice to, again, recreate that sort of cave look that the birds are looking for, the hole in the piece of wood. And so that's it. That's how I do nest boxes. That's how I make my famous mason jar nest. And, you know, reach out with any questions. Hope you all found this helpful. Thanks, Flock, for following along, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Birds in the sky keeping me down. They won't let me out of their town. How I wish I could be one of them. How I wish I could be one of them.